It is time once again for the Eat the Chalk podcast, brought to you by the DFS headquarters, that one-stop shop for all your DFS informational needs. Of course, you can hit us up on Twitter at DFS headquarters. It is time for week 8 of the NFL season? Not really sure I thought we'd get here. I am at HQ Golf Guy, the humble host of this podcast, and he is at Nick from CWE. Nick, the expert in all that is NFL DFS. Nick, as we look into week 8 here, what are some of the storylines that you're looking at? Is it injuries once again? We've got a few. Chris Carson went down as a big one over there. We've got not sure what Raheem Mostert is done. Christian McCaffrey, not part of the slate, but will not play tonight either. Injuries seem to be the key of the year so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating to some extent because Harvick had the pole and he wrecked into the wall. And for 3 days, I just sat there and tried to convince myself that everything was going to be okay. The first thing I said when Harvick was on the pole in the NASCAR room is this dude's fucking he is unplayable on the pole. Absolutely unplayable because every time he's had the pole this year, he's fucking sucked. And I know that this is not a NASCAR podcast, but this was at some point, okay? And it was just it was terribly frustrating to watch how that race played out. And yeah, I mean that's just that's just what it is. I still didn't lose. For those joining us here in the NFL season, of course, the Eat the Chalk podcast also during non-NFL times also does a weekly NASCAR podcast, and Nick is a top 20 NASCAR player in the world, it seems like. Top 20 sound right? Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I'm still at like 17 because I haven't been playing as much because at some point it was just like every fucking week. Oh, I'm running good. I'm running good. Oh, this asshole decided to hit the wall. I mean, 9 out of 10 times it's Matt Kenseth. But honestly, we'll close the book on NASCAR. All I'm going to say is I can't wait for some of these guys to fucking retire in 2 weeks. I am so done with Jimmy Johnson. Trash driver. My entire memory of Jimmy Johnson is just going to be some guy who can't fucking drive a race car, just like Dale Earnhardt Jr., just some guy who's there to cause wrecks and just be an asshole. And Matt Kenseth, Lord have fucking mercy, is that guy just never able to do anything. But we'll play him again this weekend because they're starting in the back of the field, and you know how that whole spiel goes. But
before we get into that, I want to ask you one question.
Sure.
I am an LA sports guy. I am a Dodgers fan, a Lakers fan, a Kings fan, a Rams fan. How happy should I be knowing 2020 is just a disaster, but for sports, it's been fantastic.
I think it's great. Like I tell people all the time, like, I know like millions of people have lost their job, and America's in the midst of like choosing between which potential president is going to bring us down slowest. Banner year for Nick from CWE in 2020, business doing better than ever, fantasy better than ever. So I'm not complaining. I mean, I guess it just makes sense. The story of my life would be that it takes a fucking disaster for my shit to finally get straight. But as far as the NFL, well, first of all, Brian, I mean, I feel like we haven't talked forever. And, I just got to ask you, is Nick from CWE looking good today or what? I could use a little shave. These are starting to get a little bit, I'm going to have to go get my hair cut and all that stuff. But all right, now we've talked
next week I want the shave. I want the clean shave next week.
I know. I really should, but I don't care enough, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm busy doing other things. But yeah, week 8, a little bit of a reflection on week 7. I dropped a pretty good nugget in the room. Probably like 10 o'clock, and it ended up playing out exactly like I thought it would, and it really helped me have a profitable week and get away from it actually took me a little bit away from some of my Mike Davis ownership because really the other 3 chalk running backs just hit-ish. Kamara didn't really hit, but we know that his floor is like 15 to 20 points, so even him getting to like 22 or whatever was still fine. But the night before, I had seen a report that Chris Thompson had been put on the COVID-19 list, and they were recalling Devine Ozigbo, and I was like, but Robinson beat Ozigbo out in the preseason, this could be a really like sneaky good spot for James Robinson because number one, ownership at running back had been decided, which in truth it hadn't been. Like the ownership on Gio and Jamal Williams was laughably low, like just over the 20% mark in some of the 20 entry maxes. So just really confusing how you get a minimum price and a close to minimum price back, and there's just no ownership on them. Just fucking befuddles me. But I was just kind of like, the scenario with Robinson is now like he could be almost an every down on the field back. And if I'd been paying attention to a lot of Jacksonville games, because I don't know, apparently I just really like watching painful things. But the one thing I notice is like they don't trust Minshew. Like they'll get out there and they'll run the ball 3 straight fucking downs. And so I was like, this is kind of like a really sneaky spot here for Robinson because it could be all eyes on him, whole backfield to himself. They want to push him the ball, and the matchup to boot just wasn't bad. So I feel, and I wouldn't be shocked if he was the highest scoring running back last week, to be honest with you. I think he had to be, and it was at barely any ownership because of how the rest of the running backs came together. So
I was one Derrick Henry falling into the end zone away from being very right about that.
What?
About Derrick Henry not having a ton of success against the Steelers.
I mean, he didn't, but you look at the stat line and it's 75 yards and a touchdown. That's a dream scenario for a lot of running backs. That just tells you like how good Derrick Henry is. But it also does let you know a little bit just like how reliant he is on either having just like absolutely monster fucking rushing yards or touchdowns. So, and he's going to be someone we talk about at length this week.
Yep.
But yeah, good week for me. It was a week where I was kind of like, man, I don't know how this really went. I played unusual to how I usually go about things. I played 2 cash games because I ran through probably like 10 variations. 4 of them had Lockett and Adams on the same team. But I opted to not go with that on either because I really wanted Travis Kelce, which just ended up being an LOL fucking disaster.
Yeah, that was.
It was really bad because it would have taken it literally would have taken, because you look at the replacements. The replacement for me, I played more Harrison Bryant than Njoku just because I heard Njoku getting a lot more buzz. I really did think Njoku was probably the better play of the two, even though Bryant was starting, just because of the baked-in chemistry with Baker. And I really think the talent is still weighing in Njoku's favor. So it's really it's sad because the pivot, I don't remember who the other receiver would have been. It probably would have been taking out like one of my receivers. All I know is that the quad that I would have landed on would have been fucking Adams, Lockett, Deontay Johnson, and either Njoku or Bryant, and that would have taken me like plus 40, 50 points where I was at. And I was already at like 210 points because I had Washington defense, Kyler Murray. So it ended up being a situation where like had a good week that could have been like possibly, takedown territory in single entry, and it just didn't happen because I couldn't. I loved Lockett. That's what I'm saying. So long story short, one cash team had Adams, one cash team had Lockett. Both cashed, won like 89% of head-to-heads, which has been a huge boon. And I suggest people do that like way more. That's been a huge boon to like buoying my success this year. Has been hitting a lot of head-to-heads. So now that I've talked for 9 minutes, please go ahead and say words.
Well, I just want to say at some point here, I know we do DraftKings pricing, but if this stock continues to drop the way that it's dropping, DraftKings stock, it was over $60 2 weeks ago. It's down to $47.40 right now. I'm going to go to FanDuel because I stupidly, when it had dropped back down to about 45, bought some DraftKings stock, and now I feel like I'm going to lose a lot of money on that. But anyway, let's get to it. We've got a bunch of NFL games. Tonight, obviously, is a nice one with no Christian McCaffrey. So you Mike Davis owners out there in daily or yearly long seasons, enjoy Mike Davis for one more week. And even DFSers, for showdowns and stuff, can enjoy Mike Davis for one more week. But let's get right to it. We started off with the Indianapolis Colts and the Detroit Lions, a 1:00 game. Let's see here. Open up the depth chart a little bit. 1:00 game here. Matt Stafford, Phil Rivers, 64 for Stafford, 59 for Rivers. DeAndre Swift at 53. Talks about Kerryon Johnson being traded. That's a possibility. There's even been some talks. I think the Giants have talked to the Lions about Kenny Galladay. Not really sure what that rumor was about, but I imagine the Lions laughed in the Giants' face about that. Galladay at 66. T.Y. Hilton's been terrible at 49. Jonathan Taylor at 66. DeAndre Swift at 53. Tight ends Hawkinson at 53 and Trey Burton at 35. I kind of like Stafford here in this one.
Yeah, Matt Stafford's absolutely useless. At the beginning of the year, a lot of emphasis on look at what Stafford looked like before he got hurt last year. And, this guy was like a top 6 fantasy quarterback. He's had back-to-back, shoot for the moon type, matchups, and he's just been terrible. It's not been like he's been fantasy terrible. And that we don't care about what he's actually like in real life. There are plenty of horrible real-life quarterbacks who are terrible and great for fantasy. Look at Daniel Jones. Whenever he's going to have a few good games a year, but other than that, he's a fucking walking and tripping disaster. But
I kind of see a bounce back. I don't know. I see a bounce back this week.
It could happen. This is one of those games where I'm just like, I'm bored. I don't like this game. I think that it's possible that Jonathan Taylor gets talked up way too much. 6,600 is a lot to play for a guy who just really, in my opinion, just doesn't look like he's putting it together yet. I think you're going to see either he's going to be extremely reliant on touchdowns or he's going to be extremely reliant on volume. And I don't think the team's really there yet with him on volume. And it's unfair to say because the last time they played, the game kind of broke odd, so that he, was not even playing in the fourth quarter. So I could be terribly wrong, and that's not to say I'm going to have some exposure for sure this week, but he's not at the top of my list. At 5,300, I think there's just much more of an argument to play DeAndre Swift over Jonathan Taylor. It's not like I like young flashy things in DFS more than, even though Jonathan Taylor is just as new. But he's like a plotter. I just feel like Jonathan Taylor is, going to be Adrian Peterson in 15 years, where he's a guy that's just out there annoying some other fantasy owner because he's out there. But all the usage and things like that is certainly angling in the right direction for Swift. Good involvement in the passing game. Interesting conversation about explosiveness. I think for me, Jonathan Taylor was a stud at Wisconsin, no question about it. Very good running back. Always broke off a lot of long runs. We know that possibility is there, but it seems to me like Swift just seems like a more explosive player at this point. And with a $1,300 discount, I think I'm just much more interested in going that route. Quite frankly, other than that, you could toss some Galladay in GPPs, but that's a pretty hefty price. I guess you could be looking at Trey Burton again. Are we going to get another weird Trey Burton game? They clearly, he's finally back to health, it looks like, and they want to use him. And look, we know that he was a pretty sought after guy leaving Philadelphia a couple years ago after their Super Bowl, and he spent some painful years in Chicago and ended up in Indianapolis. But I think there's some potential there for 3,500. That's one of those bye weeks for Indianapolis, and they forgot what Burton did and just left him, at a really cheap price.
The Minnesota Vikings head to Lambeau for the Green Bay Packers, a 1:00 kickoff. I do believe, if I'm correct, that Dalvin Cook made a little comment on Twitter that said, "I'll see you guys on Sunday." Believe he should be back. We'll see. I expect him to play, just based on that Twitter comment alone. We've got Kirk Cousins at 6,000, Aaron Rodgers at 76, Aaron Jones at 73, Jamal Williams at 61. Probably expect to see Williams in a lot of that situation, a lot of the main ball carrier, at least 61. Delvin Cook at 75. Alexander Madison, if Cook does not go, is at 6. But the wide receivers are the guys we're talking about here, and Devontae Adams at 88, 72 for Adam Thielen, and 65 for Justin Jefferson. Tanyan at 43, Irv Smith at 3,000. Not really interested in either of those guys. Maybe a little bit of Tanyan if he plays. And wide receivers galore here in this one, right, Nick?
I mean,
wait a minute.
My personal take is if Cook and Jones play, that I'm just going to smash as much of that ownership as I possibly can, because I think, people inevitably will look. This whole season has just been play Jones when everyone looks at Adams, play Adams when everyone looks at Jones. I'm not going to stop that. I think 8,800 is a lot. I think some of the smarter fantasy players will probably not X that X amount or anything, but just look at that and say that's a lot to give up. Is there a guarantee that he's, and especially since oh man, what a letdown spot this is, coming off an absolutely massive game. But more than that, this team played 7 weeks ago, and that was the first Devontae Adams smash. So people are going to be looking at it and be like, Aaron Jones is dinged up. There's no other receivers ever in Green Bay. He's just roasted this team 7 weeks ago. Let's put all of our eggs in the Devontae Adams basket, and then Tanyan catches 2 touchdowns, and MVS catches a touchdown, and Jones/Williams catches a touchdown. It's a very tricky game. That's all. That's kind of my general take on it. Is I think the Packers can get their points regardless of what Minnesota does. It's irrelevant what Kirk Cousins does on the field.
It does look like Aaron Jones will not play.
If he doesn't play, I mean, it's 6,100. I think that's still a really good price for Jamal Williams. He didn't have an over-the-top game, but there was a lot of concern going into it. Would you see a lot more A.J. Dillon? And we really didn't. And look, I think the Packers are an organization that are willing to pivot based off of matchup, but I still don't feel like that this is that much of a case. I don't think it's a situation where you have to force Dillon in. I think that they could use Williams and be successful. And at 60, like I said, 6,100 it's high, but it's still someone I'm willing to play. I like Irv Smith in this game a lot too. I really do. I think that he's a cheap tight end. There really hasn't been much motivation most weeks to pay up at tight end, and this is a week you could. I think that there are enough values out there that you possibly could. But, for me, this whole thing comes down to Cook and Jones. If Jones is out, then, my opinion on Devontae Adams changes a bit, but I'm still extremely concerned based off of the level of ownership he should have and the real unlikelihood that he's going to be able to do consecutively what he did last week.
The battle in Baltimore, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, 1:00 kickoff. Some questions about the health of Deontay Johnson, which kind of impacts Chase Claypool. I would imagine Claypool, who just disappeared last week, 1 catch for minus whatever yards with a fall. It just was ugly for Chase Claypool if you played him. Ben Roethlisberger's at 66, Lamar Jackson at 74. We've got Mark Ingram questionable. Not sure if he's going to play. If not, we see J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards both under 5,000. Connor at 64. Juju Smith-Schuster at 5,400. Deontay at 55 if he plays. Chase Claypool is at 52. James Washington at 3,000. Marquise Brown at 61. We've got Mark Andrews at 58 and Eric Ebron at 39. This is just going to be one of those mud battles and one of those battles where it's just a defensive battle. Are we going to see a lot of offense in this one?
It's really interesting. First of all, first thing I want to do is to tell everyone who, absolutely contested that there's no question. I'm absolutely 100% surety that this Deontay Johnson, James Washington, Chase Claypool thing is going to be just rotating. And fuck you. Go fuck yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. This guy's been targeted. If he's in the game, he's Pittsburgh's number 1 receiver. Just get it. Just move past it. Yep. In games that he's actually played, he's averaging 13 targets a game. Okay? So if your definition of an in and out target share is that everyone else gets 1 and he gets 15 and it's an equal split, you really should kind of, do some rationalization around how you're researching, because you're dead wrong. And the laughable thing about this is 5,500 is $2,000 too low for Deontay Johnson. So,
and he did say he expects to play this week.
Yeah, so again, it's going to be a week where everyone's going to be, well, I mean, they're playing Baltimore and we can't expect – he's going to see 15 targets, 13 targets, 10 targets. Would you pay 5,500 for 10 targets? Yes, I will pay 5,500 for 10 targets coming from a great offense, right? We're not debating the fact that this is a great offense. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that Pittsburgh is Kansas City, but we saw Kansas City absolutely just run through Baltimore. This game, to me, it's going to go one of two ways. This is my take. It is going to be one of those annoying, like, oh my God, 21-18 struggle. I really think this is going to be like 41-38, and at the end of the day, we're like, damn, we didn't see that one coming at all. And thus, when I'm building my tournament lineups, I like a Lamar Jackson who's been really terrible this year from a fantasy perspective, given what the expectations are. I like James Conner. I like Deontay. I like Ebron. I like Andrews. I like Brown. If Ingram isn't going to play, Lord have mercy, please fucking get J.K. Dobbins involved in things, like at 4,600, that is a really, really, really good price. And Ingram didn't practice yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to know until Friday, but Lord have mercy to me. I mean, I know these are good defenses, but they're also good offenses, I think. I know Pittsburgh is a good offense. Do we believe that Baltimore is a good offense? If we believe Baltimore is a good offense, then and look, in defense of what I'm saying, like I said, the Chiefs moved the ball at ease against Baltimore. In the second half of that game last week, Tennessee was imposing its will against Pittsburgh. They moved the ball right down the field when they wanted to. So it's not to say that can't happen to Pittsburgh again. I don't know, but I get this take that we are not going to see much action on this game because people are going to feel like it's a defensive battle and it's too good. But like, come on, man, you've got like some consolidated production here with Connor and Deontay Johnson and Andrews and Marquise Brown. Like, we know where the production and Lamar Jackson, we know where the production is going to come from. Aren't these the situations as fantasy players we really want to attack in tournaments specifically? Like, if we know where the production is likely to come from and we think this game has the potential to kind of go over the top, it just reads to me as a great setup to play some of those guys and just put some chalky pieces around them that we feel comfortable about. I think this is going to be like my game stack that kind of does extremely well for me at low ownership. That's my take as of now.
Okay, we are live on YouTube and all the other kind of companies that do host these podcasts will be up on all those shortly once this is over. But live on YouTube. So if you have any questions, any comments, I know we got a couple last week. Throw them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them live on the air here over the next hour or so. We did talk a little bit over the week about possibly discussing. Kind of going through our cash builds as we kind of go through and how to build cash lineups and that sort of thing. And I mentioned that now because the next game we're going to talk about is the Tennessee Titans at the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think we know where we're going with this, but I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's cash, tournaments. You just lock Derrick Henry into 8,000, correct?
I mean, there are people who literally poo-poo the idea of Derrick Henry because he doesn't catch passes.
Gosh,
and that's great. Like, it's great to be Nyheim Hines and catch passes. And when Derrick Henry rushes for 250 yards and 5 touchdowns, like, congratulations overcoming that deficit, right? Especially on a week where Derrick Henry is likely to be the highest owned running back unless something absolutely falls off the rails and we get like Kareem Hunt can't play and we get a boner for whatever Johnson. Oh, that was kind of a good joke, man. I didn't even play that up. That was really good.
Next.
This is what they paid me the big bucks for. But Yeah, I mean, it jumped out.
You get paid very much appropriately for that kind of joke.
Yeah, no, I do. I can validate that. But no, it's really interesting. When I ran my projections, like it was a slam dunk, no questions asked. And, projection systems typically tend to err on the side of caution, right? Like usually my projections in the NFL like have guys at like 85 yards and then whatever percentage that they're whatever percentage they rush for is the likelihood of the touchdown equity. My projection model had Derrick Henry for 141 yards and 1.4 touchdowns. I mean, it was just like, okay, it was like 31.4 fantasy points. I was like, that's before I adjust anything and kind of like try to make them real. So, and it doesn't mean anything, right? That means nothing. The fact that a projection model said, but it's just like, come on, you look at this. This is a game. This is definitely like a bounce back spot for Jacksonville after that huge letdown against the Steelers last week.
Tennessee.
Whatever. No, it is. Tennessee lost to Pittsburgh.
Right.
But
so what are we talking about Jacksonville for?
Oh, if I said Jacksonville, it's just because I don't. Yeah, all right. Anyway, great bounce spot for the Titans. The only thing that kind of concerns me is Tannehill is fucking annoying, man.
Isn't he? Isn't he though?
He really is, because you run into the risk that, like I said, Derrick Henry is absolutely tied to touchdown and volume. And look, he's going to get volume because he gets volume even when they lose. So that's not really the concern. But the concern is that they're at the 3-yard line, and on first down, they're like, oh, man, we should really run the football in right now with our quarterback. And plus, with A.J. Brown back, I mean, he can break plays. Jonnu Smith is in play this week. I heard a lot of early week talk about, I think that the Bengals left tackle is supposed to miss this game. And, it could be tougher for Joe Burrow. And it could. I mean, that's definitely in the realm of possibilities. But when I'm looking at it, I'm like, you have a quarterback who's not afraid to run the football against a defense that's just not been good. And I'm pretty sure Burrow leads the NFL in passing right now. Now that Dak Prescott's injured, I thought attempts or yardage or something. But yeah, why would we stop that now? I mean, you're telling me that we're scared of a quarterback who could run touchdowns in because his left tackle. I get in theory why that's there, but this is an offense that, I mean, it's jam-packed with talent. Gio's a good pass catcher. I don't think much of him from a running back perspective, but whatever. He's there to catch passes. His price has come up, so that's a little bit annoying too. You look at that.
He's at 5,800 this week.
And I think Mixon could come back. I don't know how likely it is, but I think it's still a possibility, which at Mixon's price, it's now $500 more than Gio. It's kind of like okay, if we would play Gio at 58, why wouldn't we play Mixon at 63? Right. But those receivers, Higgins, I mean, AJ Green, look, you're taking a risk, but in the short term, he's like cash game radar play with the amount of targets that he's getting. Because one of these days, if he's actually going to continue to get that volume, and we are assumptive that this team is going to be trailing and trying to play from behind, touchdown equity at some point is going to flip in his favor, and he's going to go for 8 for 115 and a touchdown at 4,900, and it's beautiful play there. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity in this game. It's definitely a game I like a lot, and I think everyone else will too. And I think, at 6,200, Joe Burrow, absolutely cash game viable for me. In a week where I think it is kind of tough to figure out exactly what you want to do at quarterback, because you've either got guys who are super expensive and need everything to break their way, or you just and we don't have Kyler. It's just a little bit tougher, I think, this week.
Moving on, we've got another game that could be sneaky good for DFS players, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders headed to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Again, another 1 o'clock kickoff. Derek Carr at 55, Baker Mayfield at 61 still. Josh Jacobs at 62. We got Kareem Hunt at 69. D'Ernest Johnson would be at 4,000. Ruggs at 49. Aguilar at 47. Jarvis Landry at 56. Rashard Higgins at 42 could be an interesting play. for folks out there. Darren Waller at 56, Austin Hooper at 4,000. Let's start with the question. We know you don't like Baker. We know Baker's not a favorite of yours, but what about Rashard Higgins at 4,200 this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that's getting talked up a lot, and I'm just here with my popcorn waiting for the inevitable 3 for 35 line. That's obviously going to happen, and Donovan People-Jones has like 6 for whatever I just said about AJ Green. Just apply that to Donovan People-Jones. This game scares me. Really does. And here are my reasons why. I feel like these are both teams you can't trust. Like just when you want to put your trust into them, like Aguilar's been doing so well and all these things, like I just feel like this is where chalk can bust really dramatically. So let's go through both sides. Obviously, sure. Nick Chubb's still out. I know Baker Mayfield had to have put up a monster score last week because he had like 5 touchdowns. I mean, I have the game pulled up. Baker sadly threw 5 touchdowns and still barely had 30 fantasy points. And that just shows you the value of a guy who could potentially run with the football. Okay, so I don't trust Baker. So let's look at the receiving options. Well, I feel like Jarvis Landry makes a ton of sense. I don't think people are talking about him enough. Why isn't this a situation where Jarvis doesn't get 15 targets? Please extrapolate to me why Rashard Higgins is the guy who everyone goes to. He's 4,200. There's arguably way better plays under 4,200 than Rashard Higgins. I mean, I firmly believe that. Maybe even on that team. But nobody's really talking about Jarvis because everybody's got the erection for Higgins, and then obviously Kareem Hunt's there, and we know that Kareem Hunt and look, I think Kareem Hunt is super playable. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, like, why is there no talk about Jarvis Landry? Why is there no talk about Bryant? Why is there no talk about Njoku? There's a number of guys on this team.
It's a shiny new toy.
And you're right. But I mean, Austin Hooper had an appendectomy like 10 days ago, right? It's certainly well within the realm of possibilities that he's not playing this week. Why are we assuming that Rashard Higgins is all of a sudden going to get all this attention? I think it's really faulty logic that it's one of those like bad chalk plays where this guy could easily luck into landing on the right side of production. But for me, I might not play any Rashard Higgins. I just don't really see it. On the flip side of things.
But let me ask you this really quick though. What do you need out of a guy who's only 4,200?
That's such a faulty logic. What do you need? You need him to put up a big enough number that he fits into the piece of the pie where he's optimal in conjunction with other people putting up big numbers around him. This has long since been I need 2x, 3x. Like when I hear that it boils me to hear things like that because that's not how this game is set up. It's not we get 50,000, we want to hit 150, so we need 5x or 3x from each player. It's just that's not how the game works. So what we need from him is we need him to put up a big score that allows us to be in position. It's very unlikely to be a situation where if he goes for and gets 10 points that it matters that much for you because on a weekly basis, there's guys under 4K that have more than 10 points. I'm not saying they have 30 points, but I'm saying every week there's some cheap guy who catches a 30-yard touchdown. Okay, that's 10 points. They've outproduced, Rashard Higgins. So maybe in cash games, it's a little bit better of an argument, I guess. But do you also want to play 2 Cleveland Browns on your team? Because I think that Hunt still seems like he's priced a little bit silly. He's under 7K. We've streamed running backs against Vegas all year and last year and probably before that. I don't want to play 2 guys from the Browns in cash games. And I would play Hunt or Landry over Higgins. On the opposite side of the ball, probably like week 2, week 3, maybe week 4, we had a situation where Jared Goff like popped in my model, like just,
yep.
Well, Derek Carr is that guy this week where he's down there. at a really affordable price. Has I think my model had him for 12 rushing yards or 15 rushing yards or something like that. And look, that's kind of stuff goes overlooked a lot. So you mean to tell me that I have 1 to 2 points as a floor that a lot of other quarterbacks don't provide you? That can be enough. The biggest thing, my biggest slight against Carr is just that how likely is it that he produces a top 5 outcome? And I just feel like the chances more often than not are that he falls into that 8 to 12 range, which makes him appealing for cash games, because I think that Cleveland is good enough without Odell that they can get some kind of a lead, right? And it is more of the Raiders kind of playing catch up. But I don't know. I haven't. There's one guy I really like this week for cash. We haven't got to yet, but Carr's out there because, again, what happens if it is a situation where he throws for 4 touchdowns and ends up running for 1 as part of his 20 yards, and he's sitting here with a 32-point game? At his price, now it doesn't matter what Russ Wilson does unless Russ has 45 fantasy points, unless Lamar has 45 fantasy points, and it's that dramatically different. So Josh Jacobs also pops. And Cleveland isn't really a team that's necessarily getting torn up by running backs. They tend to kind of be a pass funnel, which makes this an extremely good spot, I think, to pivot in tournaments onto passing on the Raiders, pass game and load up on Jacobs. And maybe he just, goes 135-3 and those other guys kind of suffer a little bit. Gotta like Aguilar, really Waller though, because Cleveland's been well known to be not only a pass funnel, but also they've been destroyed by tight ends for the last couple of years. So I think that Waller is a pretty safe play with a lot of upside on any given week. On paper, this is definitely a very good game to target. It's just like I said, I could also see there being a lot of avenues where players we really weren't necessarily investing in kind of are the ones that managed to get there.
Makes a ton of sense. Moving on, we've got some, looks like a little bit of wet weather in Buffalo expected when the Patriots come to town to take on the Bills. Another 1 o'clock kickoff. Cam Newton is at 57. I think he should be at about 27. Josh Allen is at 7,000. We've got Devin Singletary at 51 and Zach Moss at 44. Damian Harris at 42. James White at 45. Edelman just had a surgery recently. Keneal Harry and Demir Bird are both under 4,000. Stephon Diggs at 68. John Brown at 44. And Cole Beasley, how good has he been? 53. Not sure about the situation with the Buffalo tight ends. There's been a bunch of COVID situations. Tyler Croft at 35. I don't know. I just, it is.
This game is gross. Yeah. I think that, the Belichick system has always been just take out the other team's best player. So one of Josh Allen or, Stefan Diggs is getting removed and I'm just not. Cole Beasley really has been good, but I like Cole Beasley as a $4,500 player. Right. I'm not so sure I want him at 5,300, but he
not
could
enough touchdown upside.
That's kind of where I'm at, and I don't think you're necessarily guaranteed to get those 11 target games. I think his really a 4 to 6 catch guy on a typical week's basis. So this game as a whole, I see the price 4,500 on James White. That piques my interest a little bit because I'm actually assuming that the Patriots won't get out to a lead here. I'm assuming that, it could be a lot of dump off passes, but it still doesn't really make me feel overly comfortable to invest in that. Hey, I see the T behind your ear. Listen, man, I won 10 millionaire tickets in the NBA this summer. So I'm really looking forward to, what is it, next week, I think?
The Masters in two weeks. Yeah.
All I'm saying, and this is no pressure, but I'm expecting one of those 10 tickets to turn into $1 million. So you better provide.
I will personally guarantee it, or I won't.
That's really good. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that a lot because I told myself that, because this is as crazy as this is going to sound, I'm actually coming off of a really good baseball season. I hate baseball, but I actually took down like 2 tournaments really early in the season, 2 mini-max tournaments. And so like my overall plus minus on baseball is in the hundreds of percentages. I did really well grinding cash games, which I'm finding I really, really, really like to do. I
will say though, the guy who came on last week and decided to drop in the golf question during the middle of our NFL podcast, I nailed that one. Dylan Fratelli shot 7 under that day. It was fantastic. Congratulations!
Awesome.
Congratulations to me for winning somebody else money. Congratulations.
Well, listen, we're both only here to tout our own successes, right? I have my Deontay Johnson call and my James Robinson, and you have your Dylan Fratelli. But no, golf was something I'm really like. I like the sports where I don't have to like do it every day because, man, sometimes like NBA is just – I play NBA very seriously.
It gets exhausting.
It's exhausting. With baseball, I'm like, okay, I'm building one lineup, and that's all I have to worry about, So that's why I really like golf. So I'm going to really try starting with the Masters to kind of give it a real go this year and learn more about it. But anyway, yeah, this game sucks. Let's go on to another game that sucks too.
Another game that sucks? Why would we do that? Oh, wait. I know, because we go through all of them, and eventually we've got to talk about the New York Jets. The New York Jets are, I believe it was about, I don't know.
19.5 underdogs.
Yeah, it was probably about 7 or 8 weeks ago I tweeted, this game would be fun. The Jets get to play the Chiefs. I can't wait to see that one. Well, here we are in Kansas City, 1 o'clock kickoff. Not a ton of the 425 games, Nick. I'm sorry to tell you. Only 3 on the slate. Sam Darnold, 48. LaMichael Pirine at 43. Gore at 4. Crowder at 58. And then Patrick Mahomes at 81, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 65, Le'Veon Bell at 46, DeAndre Washington at 4,000. Okay. Tyreek Hill at 67. Interestingly enough, won a full-sized Tyreek Hill signed helmet last week. Interesting.
Really?
Enough. I did. So that's
do you want to sell it?
Sure, why not?
All right, cool. We'll talk at some point.
Sammy
I like
Watkins,
buying stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's fully authenticated. PSA or Beckett, one of the two. Sammy Watkins at 48. If he goes, and I think he may go, or at least give it a shot. I could be wrong. Am I wrong?
I have no idea.
Travis Kelce. I'll look it up while you're talking. Travis Kelce at 66. Is there any reason? Talk about the game for a second so that I can look up Sammy Watkins. But does it really matter?
Super weird, but like in my first cash game build, I was like, something just tells me that this is a really good spot. He's not playing.
He's not. He has not practiced. Okay. He did not practice today either.
Yeah, I just have this really weird feeling that's not. I haven't like researched it yet. I just have this strikes me as being like a Tyreek Hill breaks the slate type game because it just feels like this is one of those situations where this team is so bad. It's going to let Tyreek Hill get behind them. Mahomes is going to take a couple of deep shots, and we end the first quarter, and Tyreek Hill has 3 catches for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. And we're like, holy shit, like, why even play? Why even watch football the rest of the day? Because if you don't have them, you're done.
Right.
You know that. But, like, that was my first take. This team was frustrating to me. I'm going to be honest with you, because it had appeared that the hand was tipped and that McCole Hardman was just a Tyreek Hill backup. And I don't know for sure because I don't look at snap counts or stuff like that until it's way later in the week. But Demarcus Robinson got no attention last week. And I sat here and puffed my chest about the things I got right. That was a huge miss.
How much of that, though, can you really take into context, though, knowing that there was enough snow on there to affect things? Mahomes just didn't throw the ball, didn't really have to.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. There's a lot of data that shows like games over 25% 25 degrees are absolutely like terrible for quarterbacks. And I knew that. That was something like I played no Mahomes despite it being a good matchup last week. Why did I play why did I play Travis Kelce?
I did the same thing.
I turned the game on and I'm like, you're a fucking idiot sometimes. Like, for as much smart stuff as you can do, you do things like this, and like, he's not cheap. It's not like, oh, we have 3K Travis Kelce, let's just throw him in there and play him. No, like, let's spend money on a tight end who's playing in the snow when we know that it's going to be really difficult. Yeah, so that was I think that had something to do with it, but like Tyreek still got off. He was getting a bunch of attention. I mean, I don't know.
You got to throw it to somebody. Let me ask you this, though, and this is the question everyone's going to be talking about. Obviously, Le'Veon, they want to figure out what they've got in him. It's against the Jets. Is he the play this week, or are we just ridiculous for overlooking Hilaire and thinking to go to Le'Veon Bell? Because you've got obviously the narrative and
this is
wanting to see.
This is 2020 NFL. There are very few like running backs that are, this is just your show, you know?
Right.
I mean, for fuck's sake, Alvin Kamara still has Latavius Murray behind him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They do play different roles, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Clyde Edwards-Helaire truther either. Here's something that I would say. I think it's worth doing some research and just kind of looking at the progression of the season in the past few years for the Chiefs. It can only be the last two, because that's when with Mahomes starting at quarterback. My gut reaction is that Mahomes' performance starts up here and just steadily goes like that. You know, it starts to decline because they're like, hey, we've put ourselves in position to be there. We don't want to risk Mahomes like doing too much, throwing out a shoulder, anything that could happen. Because
losing a kneecap.
Yeah. So like last year, I really felt like we played Damian Williams or whoever was starting at running back for the Chiefs like early on in the season, and it was just like a kick in the nuts every week. But then it broke, and at some point it was just like, holy shit, and like the Chiefs are running the football. I'm wondering if it's just a situation where that's Andy Reid's philosophy, is like, let Mahomes' arm get us to a position where we could feel comfortable, and then let's really hit them with the running game. And that's something I want to look into to see if it's just something more than what I think, and it's actual reality.
I think you're onto something there. But my point is Le'Veon Bell is going to score a touchdown this week. We know that, right?
I mean, yeah, I think
they're going to force feed him the ball with an opportunity to score a touchdown.
But here's the problem.
They're going to be up by enough.
It could be, but why? I don't know why you're playing Le'Veon Bell is not a backup running back. Like, you know what I mean? That's I think the biggest takeaway is I look at him as like a 1B. It might be like between those two, it might be like a 60-40 type thing. So I think they try to get it. They've done this with Darwin Thompson and the other guys there too, where there's no goal line guarantee that it's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So they could get down there the first drive of the game and just be like, all right, Le'Veon, you're in. And I don't think it's that simple that it's just Le'Veon needs to score a touchdown, so that makes him a viable play. I don't think so. I think he's a viable play if you think that, you know, he's going to get, you know, if you're counting touchdowns, I think you need to bank on him getting at least 12 other points outside of one touchdown. So if you think he's going to score 2 touchdowns and he needs to get 6 other points, but I kind of put like that 18-point mark is to be where I'd really want to see out of a guy who's 4,600, maybe 18 points is where I think you could still have a shot with something optimal.
They've got to see what they've got in the guy.
Yeah, I get it.
What are we looking at?
Do you really need? I don't know. My wife was looking at the wall, and I'm trying to figure out like, what are you looking at? Yeah, it's from the champagne. Yeah.
Oh, from when you guys were celebrating the Dodgers winning the World Series.
Yeah. No, we signed like a really, really big deal, like several months ago, and we were like, all right, we have this bottle. Our guy, you can't see it, but. Our guy over this shoulder here sent us a bottle of champagne for kind of sticking through.
By the way, I to mention that I ended up getting caught up on Billions, the Showtime show Billions. Damon John is not a good actor.
Oh yeah, I have to watch.
Not a good actor. He was not good in that show whatsoever. Great on Shark Tank, great businessman, not a good actor.
Yeah, so we popped that when we got that client, but that's why I was staring off into space like a lunatic. We're talking about the Jets. I went full on fucking Adam Gase for a second.
I have beer all over one of my walls in my house, including some portrait stuff, but not for celebration. It was because my sister-in-law tripped and shook it up, and it blew up and went all over the wall.
Oh, nice.
So there's still dots, and I got to repaint at some point, but I'm lazy. So anyway.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm
if you're going to play Le'Veon Bell, this is the week to do it.
Yeah, this is the week to do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, I don't think there's all the Chiefs are just tournament only, though, in my opinion.
Oh, of course.
I really can't fathom in good faith being like, I think this is the good week to play Tyreek Hill and Cash, because this team is so bad that, like, it could be Bell with a touchdown, Hilaire with a touchdown, and a defense with 5 touchdowns.
Let me ask you a question, just strategy-wise. When you see a game that you know is going to be a blowout, but you know the team has to score to get it to be a blowout, how do you take that into context in terms of they're not going to play 4 quarters, but they may get enough done in 2.5 quarters that represents 4 quarters or equals 4 quarters?
Yeah, I don't care. If the team is going to score like 30 points, which they should relatively easily, the starting unit should, there's a huge value into playing them in tournaments, because some people will say, and look, this isn't like the NBA necessarily, where that is a little bit more of a concern, because you have so many players that aren't going to be in blowout situations that could get you there. You know what I mean? But at the NFL is different, because using the Tyreek Hill example I used is just like the perfect way to illustrate it. Like, he can catch 2 passes and be optimal. So it's not as much as like he needs a triple double and he needs to do that in 26 minutes to be able to do it. So I think that's where you get a lot of value in playing them in tournaments. Tyreek Hill is my favorite. On the other side of the ball, maybe if Crowder is back, like, there's some value in playing him in tournaments, because he could catch 43 passes.
Sorry, I'm Googling Crowder right now to see that.
Here's something I'm going to say, and this is probably going to end up being the shit that I eat next week when we do this podcast. I think this is going to be a LaMichael Pirine breakout game.
Oh, hey now.
The Chiefs are fucking. Their defense is not equipped to handle running backs. Like, and what better way to just really try to, like, instill confidence, give a guy opportunity, than a game that's way out of hand. Now, there are some downsides to this thought, right? Because they could just as easily be like, this kid is an asset that we want in the future. We don't want to risk him getting hurt, so we're just not going to play him too much. But are you going to play? Are you going to play Frank Gore? He's limited, but that could just be age.
Ty Johnson.
Yeah, Ty. I mean, I'm okay on that. I don't think I'm going to go that route. But it's interesting. If you're playing a bunch of lineups, I think Pirine is like an interesting way to get really, really fucking weird. And believe me, it is like Adam Gase eyeball weird. But yeah, I think there's sneakily some kind of like merit into testing those waters this week.
Well, let's jump from one guy who could make an impact in Pirine to another guy who's hoping to make an impact, but I have a feeling Aaron Donald may shut that door really quick. Tua Tagovailoa getting the start for the Miami Dolphins at home against the Rams. Got a week off, so an extra week to get in that work. Nothing more sad in a sports world than watching Ryan Fitzpatrick lose that job, and the way that he kind of handled it was nice, but you could tell he was really disappointed. Jared Goff is at 65. Tua is at 56. Darrell Henderson has been really good at 59. Myles Gaskin at 52. Not sure I trust any of the other running backs there at all. Cooper Kupp at 65. Robert Woods at 63. Josh Reynolds had a decent game on Monday night at 31. Devontae Parker at 57. Preston Williams at 43. Tyler Higbee, I don't know. Everett at 37 and Gesicki at 49. No, I'm a Rams guy. They're my team, but I'm not touching this game.
So what if I told you that I'm almost certainly going to play the Dolphins defense as my cash game defense? So number one, I have a little bit of an addiction with them. Okay. They're always cheap, and they just always somehow, I know they're going to give up points. And then first of all, in daily fantasy football, if you are playing a defense because you're trying to project a shutout,
no.
My name is Nick from CWE. Find my head-to-heads. Please take them. So, like,
let's for those who are trying to make that build, when you pick a defense, just go to the bottom, find one that could be halfway decent in a little bit, and just go with that defense.
And, dude, honestly, like, every week this season, there's been some shithole defense. Last week, Washington was really cheap, and that's who I played in cash. Yep. And they go out there, and that was a really easy and obvious, like, okay, they're running out a high school offensive line in Dallas, and Andy Dalton is there. So, yeah, to me, that was just kind of a no-brainer, easy, let's do this type play. The Dolphins are a little bit different. It's just they're 2,400. I don't necessarily think they're a great defense. I'm not even saying that the matchup. I don't look at like offensive, defensive line stuff until a lot later in the week. But I know Jared Goff, and I know if Jared Goff gets rattled, really bad things can happen really, really fast. So it's just more of one of those things where, like, that's a risk at $2,400. I don't think they're going to get you 0 points. You know, the range of outcomes are honestly probably like 4 to 15, with the vast majority of outcomes lying in probably like the 4 to 7 range. But I'm okay with that. That's fine for 2,400, because defense is legitimately the most difficult thing to predict in all of football. And a strip sack fumble for a touchdown, and the team gives up 26 points, and it could still be an optimal defense that week. So
and Goff the accuracy has just been an issue the last few weeks for Jared Goff as well. He just hasn't been on.
Yeah. So in terms of actual players in this game, I think it's cute if you want to play Tua. I'd prefer to kind of wait to see what you have there. Devontae Parker popped in my model this week. I don't think I'm really going to have a ton of interest there, because I'm expecting him to see Ramsey.
You're also talking about a defense that just does not give up second half points. I mean, the Rams do not give up second half points.
Yeah,
he's got to start strong. I'm not touching any Miami Dolphin this week. Just not doing it.
The one guy that could be interesting is Mike Gesicki. And the only reason I'm saying that is because he came out and said that he played a lot of he's done a lot of second team practice with Tua. And so if those two have some kind of connection there, I mean, this is the week to exploit it, because if he goes out and has a big week this week, I do need NASCAR. I have a Chris Buescher, autographed front grill or something like that. My wife got me. There's a comment for someone, just so you know.
Okay.
Yeah. My goal in the next year is to build a studio in my basement, which means I have to pay someone to do it because I'm not good with my hands. But yeah, I'm definitely thinking of doing something like that. But yeah, Gesicki could be in play here, but again, no one else. And with the Rams, look, Woods or Kupp, one of them could very easily have a good game here. Henderson could have a good game here. Akers could have a good game here. Malcolm Brown could have a good game here. You just never know which one of these fuckers are going to trot out there and let run the football. So that's exactly why we're in the situation we're in, is we're just who's going to be the one this week. So for tournaments, I would probably look at Woods or Kupp, but overall, in the scheme of things, I'm not that into the game as a whole.
And of course, we have the trade deadline coming up on Election Day next Tuesday. So, obviously there could be some showcases as well. We got to start. Something else you got to think about over the next few days here is guys we could be showcasing for trades. And I believe Josh Reynolds is probably one of those guys that possibly could be moved. Les Snead likes to make those moves. Okay. Nick's favorite time of the day, the 4:00 games. 4:05, we start with the Chargers and the Broncos in Denver. I'll go back there. It looks like we're going to see some nothing but sun out there in Denver finally. It wouldn't be bad for football. It is fun to watch football games in the snow. I was promised, I'm upset. I was promised more snow in Denver than I got last week.
Yeah, for real. What was that?
I'm not happy.
Fucking weatherman.
I wanted to see my backyard.
Yeah.
Guys playing in snow when their boots are that deep, and I got ripped off. I'm kind of not happy about that. Also because I don't live anywhere near Denver. Justin Herbert. I'm not going to ever get that in Herbert. I'm not saying Herbert. although it's Sherbert. You know how many people say Sherbert when it's actually Sherbet? There's no second R.
Yeah,
but
well,
yet so many people use a second R, and I don't understand it.
I agree with you.
Justin, I don't get it. Everyone's like, Sherbert, I want some Sherbert. I'm like, there's no such thing. It's Sherbet. There's no second R. Justin Herbert with a second R is 6,900. Drew Lock at 53. I've gone off the rails today, guys. Josh Kelly, 49. Justin Jackson, 48. Melvin Gordon, 56. Philip Lindsay, 5. Jerry Jeudy at 48. Tim Patrick at 47. Keenan Allen. Wow, Keenan Allen was fantastic last week, 6,200. Just in terms of catches, not necessarily total points, but Hunter Henry at 42, Noah Fant at 47. Again, I kind of get a feeling. Last week we didn't have many games that we thought would be great. I think this week we have some games that are going to be pretty good fantasy-wise, and this could be one of them. But
this afternoon slate, these 3 games, there's some stuff here that really piques my interest. So first of all, if you don't play Keenan Allen on cash games this week, just fuck you. He's $6,200, and that's at least $1,500 too cheap for a guy who gets all this attention. Like, there is absolutely no question in my mind. Again, is the range of outcomes that he doesn't get there. Yeah, but you have to accept that for everyone. Nobody is guaranteed to get there, right? There's no guarantee that anybody makes it through a game, but this guy is clearly Herbert's favorite target. Josh Hermsmeyer,
don't get into my pronunciations.
Josh Hermsmeyer has established a run, actually put out some really interesting stuff on Hunter Henry, and that where Herbert likes to throw to Hunter Henry is where Denver is weakest against tight ends. So, again, it makes sense, but it's also one of those things like, just because it makes sense doesn't mean they're going to do it. And that's been a real big issue with Hunter Henry this year, is that you have Virgil Green, but both Virgil Green and Donald Parham caught touchdowns last week. I don't know if Hunter Henry has a single touchdown on the year, because on a week-to-week basis, he has a single touchdown on a week-to-week basis. Literally, Donald Parham has 2, which again is not much. Virgil Green has 1. So these tight ends just continue to get looks in the end zone. It's really if you're projecting Henry to score a touchdown, it's going to have to be longer. But I like the matchup. Those are the 2 guys I'm really looking at here. On the Charger side of the ball, and Herbert, initially Herbert was a guy I was looking at in cash games and thinking, okay, I think this is the guy I want to play. But honestly, I think I've talked myself into Derek Carr, because I'm looking at the output and saying, really, outside of this 41-point game, I think the same outcome for Herbert is likely for Carr. And even though I might not play any pieces with Carr, which I didn't do last week with Murray, so I'm not going to change up my strategy on that now. I just think I think Herbert's a good play. There's upside there, but I know I'm using Allen. On the flip side of the ball, Philip Lindsay's dealing with a concussion. I know Melvin Gordon fumbles, but if Lindsay doesn't play at 5,600. Mm-hmm. All I have is memories of Mike Davis. That first week we got Mike Davis just absolutely demolishing the Chargers. And with Gordon's capabilities catching the ball out of the backfield, I think this sets up really nicely to be a situation where you could use him. And I don't think he'll carry a ton of ownership, because, he's priced relatively close to Jonathan Williams, who I'm expecting, to be the running back for the Packers. We could see Dobbins, get some ownership if Ingram is out. So it's certainly possible that it works out, that Gordon just doesn't have much. And then outside of that, man.
Yeah, but even if Ingram's out, you still got to worry about Gus Edwards. So, I agree.
I know, but it's 3-2, but they still have Justice Hill, so it could just as easily turn into 3-3.
Which makes
don't get me wrong
sense for playing Melvin Gordon is my point.
Yeah, and Royce Freeman will be involved, but I just don't see Royce Freeman taking over for Melvin Gordon. Outside of that, it's just not a passing game I'm like hyper interested in. You know, we're starting to get all these guys back. Tim Patrick might be hurt. They're using Akui Boonham, who played with Drew Lock at Missouri, who is a very good tight end. I think he's a very good player, Albert Akui Boonham.
I've never even heard of the guy, so whatever.
He's had back-to-back weeks with 7 targets, which is really interesting because Fant was active last week and played a lot.
Listen, I just want some Jake Butt. Is there anything wrong with just wanting some Jake Butt?
No, because Nick Vanette's ahead of him, right? Like,
I just want some Jake
so
Butt.
Yeah, dude, Jake Butt was – he was a guy I played a lot when he was at Michigan, you know?
Yep. Well, that's the only reason why. I care.
Dude, the best time maybe not the best time, but man, those Devin Gardner, who was there? Who was the tight end?
Oh yeah, Jeremy was with Gallon and
Gallon was a receiver, and then
Roy Roundtree was the wide receiver.
There was another tight end though.
Hemingway.
No, damn it, it's going to bother me. I mean, this was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe I don't know. It could be as much as like 8 years ago at this point. Who the hell was the tight end for Michigan? Anyway, that was a fun time for DFS because, again, it was such isolated production that it was just like, play these guys together. And it was actually fun to watch fantasy-wise, and it's not been fun ever since.
No. And it's not going to be fun this year either because, I mean, who knows? You get Zach Charbonnet busts off a 70-yard run on the second play from scrimmage, doesn't see the ball again for the rest of the half. I mean,
he played. I saw he had four carries, and I was like, "What? Is this team doing?"
It makes no sense.
All right, let's move on here.
You keep talking. Oh, you want to move on? Okay, well, you'll keep talking.
Why? You're looking for the tight end. I'll start looking for the tight end.
This is what this show has come to, folks. I'm an hour and 6 in, and we're now talking about 2012 Michigan tight ends. Drew Brees heads to Chicago in what should be an Alvin Kamara game, as Mike Thomas and both Emmanuel Sanders are expected not to play. But it is in Chicago on the grass where New Orleans is not quite as comfortable typically and historically. Drew Brees at 63, Kamara at 82, Lat Murray comes in at 43, Traquan Smith at 47, Marquez Callaway at 34, Jared Cook at 44, Jimmy Graham on the flip side at 46, Cole Kmet at 25, Allen Robinson at 7,000, Darnell Mooney at 35, Anthony Miller at 43, David Montgomery at 59, and Nick Foles at 58. I don't know. I don't like New Orleans when they go, and it's not going to be cold. It's not going to be the frozen field of Soldier Field. But I don't know. We saw Darrell Henderson last week have a good week. There were a couple of pass plays to running backs that could have been made if Jared Goff could be accurate. So, Kamara, it is what it is. You got to play Kamara, or am I right and maybe just have a little bit of a question?
Yeah, that was a lot of words there.
Thank you. My point was the Rams running backs looked good on the ground, had some opportunities in the air against Chicago, but it was at home. On the road, New Orleans isn't what New Orleans typically is. Do we expect Alvin Kamara to have an Alvin Kamara type game, or can New Orleans slip up on the road, on the grass, outdoors, which we've seen New Orleans do before?
Right. I mean, yeah, he's not my favorite play. I don't think at this point I see that window to really wanting to play. My computer might explode, so I'm no longer looking for the tight end.
Okay.
Yeah, I was making all kinds of noises.
Is Devin Funchess the name you're trying to come up with?
Funchess was a name for sure. Funchess was one of the guys, but he was a wide receiver. Did he play tight end?
He started as a tight end.
Yeah, he was. It was tight end. Yeah, you're right. That was that era when Funchess was tight end.
But not the guy of Ian Bunting? I mean, let's go.
No, it was Funchess. It was 100% Funchess.
Okay.
All right.
Or was it, or are we just trying to end this conversation?
No, it is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway.
Here is the absolute 100%. And this is, I kind of was like talking a lot of shit about Higgins earlier. And this is why. This is a huge deal here to me. Was super fucking depressed when I saw that Allen Robinson was listed, as a concussion. I'm super hoping he's playing because this is such an easy situation to play Darnell Mooney. Like Mooney, if you watch the podcast, listen to the podcast, whatever, there have been two guys I've been like overly hyped on since week 1. and that's Darnell Mooney and Gabriel Davis. I firmly believe both of these guys are going to pop at some point. Here's the pitch. For the most part, the way you get to New Orleans is through the second wide receiver because Marshawn Lattimore shuts the other guy down. There's no real belief on my end that Chicago is going to be able to get the lead. So I don't see them trying to run David Montgomery. So that leaves the second receiver. At this point, it is not Anthony Miller. It is absolutely Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is $3,500, which is just an absolute laughing stock of a price, right? Just some real silly shit there at DraftKings, which is not something we don't expect, right? They always do weird stuff.
Right.
But that's just a really, really, really bad pricing. And he's a guy that I had immediately targeted as my cheap cash game wide receiver who should see a lot of targets. Now, here's where the interesting part comes in. And I don't know that they necessarily play the same role. I don't know. Again, I don't ever really get into super in depth. How often is this guy outside? How often is this guy in the slot? If Robinson is out, there's one of two ways things are going to go.
And he did not practice yesterday, and Matt
Correct.
Nagy is not discussing Allen Robinson or Khalil Mack for that matter.
Oh, good. They're going to trade Robinson, so that's great. But anyway, so we'll get some kind of understanding. But my thought process is if they play Anthony Miller more on the outside, that's who Lattimore is probably going to cover, right? So sure. I think it still becomes full steam ahead. Darnell Mooney at 3,500 to me, just again, easy cash game play. I don't see a scenario where his floor is under 8 points. I think his ceiling is probably around that 14 to. I don't want to say his ceiling is because in a right situation he could break 100 and a touchdown. So it's silly to try to shortchange his ceiling. But again, for sake of argument, I just think that he's likely to be a guy who's probably going to hover in my mind. I'm playing him as if he's going to get somewhere between 12 and 18 points. If they play Javon Wims more on the outside and they slot, I don't know how often Lattimore goes into the slot. It could very well be a situation where they're okay, of Wims and Mooney, we're going to treat Mooney as the number one. And all of a sudden it could turn into a Wims game where I just don't feel comfortable swimming in those waters.
Tight ends. I mean, you got Jared Cook, who's obviously somebody's got to catch the ball for New Orleans. And
if Michael Thomas isn't in play, Jared Cook's going to be in. That's just it. Michael Thomas is a huge question mark, and we even saw last week. It's just not that simple. Kamara's involved, but then you have Callaway and Austin Carr and guys that I didn't even know still played in the league out there, and I'm holy shit! So it's not just as easy as to say, well, play this guy because it just becomes way too hard to predict, especially for cash games, which one of these nameless guys is going to actually produce.
Graham, Komet, is there any point in either one of those two?
Not looking at those guys.
All right. So now we move on. The final game of the slate is the Niners headed to Seattle. I don't know where to begin because Garoppolo 54, Russell Wilson 78. Jerick McKinnon, apparently it was a rest week last week. What? JaMychal Hasty at 5,000. Coleman's not going to play. Mostert's not going to play. Wilson's not going to play. So does McKinnon come back? Was he all rested up last week when no one, Hasty looks great. Chris Carson not going to play. Carlos Hyde seems to be the guy, but he's got a hamstring thing that they're saying is not serious. So are the plays, I want to use a running back in this game. I really do. But how do I decide which running back to use?
Well, it's I tell people all the time in college football, just pick a guy from this team. It's Wake Forest that we were talking about specifically. I just told them, here's how Wake Forest works. It's really easy. Whichever guy you play, it's just automatically going to be the other guy. And that's what's going to happen here. No matter who you play, it's going to be the other guy.
So it was weird though. Most people say, McKinnon. And then for some reason, there's a quote that I read that says, oh, we wanted to give McKinnon rest this week.
Yeah, I'm extremely interested in Because in my initial build, McKinnon was the guy who like landed in my last spot in my cash games. And I watched a lot of the 49ers game because it was a 4 p.m. game. So there wasn't a lot of competition, you know. But he just wasn't out there. And I feel like they had Ayuk and Deebo Samuel taking a lot of handoffs out of the backfield, which is something they do. That's schematically a lot of what San Francisco does. Well, now they're down Deebo too, or he's at least doubtful.
Yeah, I don't think.
I think he's out. So, and I don't even know who else. You know, I'm literally when you click on this game on DK, it's all red for running backs. Mostert, Carson, Wilson, Hyde, Homer, Penny, Tevin Coleman, all these guys. So I'm like Nick Bellore. I think he's a fullback, so that's not of any interest. So you've got like DJ Dallas, but like super concerningly, you don't have anyone else in the pool. Now, I don't know who else they have.
Carlos Hyde should play.
Well, I'm talking about San Francisco. Is it just going to be McKinnon and Hasty? Because if it's McKinnon and Hasty, then I just don't feel like there's as much of a compelling argument to not play McKinnon, because I just don't see a way he's not involved. Like, they're now to the point where they love playing 3 running backs, unless they call someone up from the practice squad, and I don't know who that is, and they definitely can, but how prepared are they going to be to really be that involved? It sounds to me like they just didn't plan on playing McKinnon last week, and then the excuse just became we rested him, but they didn't want to play him. Because even at the end of that game, and I don't remember if the game was close. I hate saying stuff like that, but I don't remember exactly how the game had played out by the time it was ending. But he didn't even he didn't get much work. So I don't know. That's what makes me say, kind of like, as much as this guy could break the slate, I just don't think it's really worth doing it in cash games, because they could. And let's also not forget the fact that, like, Seattle has been the team to target with quarterbacks.
Right.
And I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't trust Shanahan. I don't trust any of these guys, because for all I know, they're going to design 3 plays where they throw to Brandon Ayuk 2 yards behind the line to scrimmage, and he takes them 70 yards for touchdowns. And Jimmy Garoppolo finishes with like 110 yards passing, where if he had just been 2 yards forward, he'd finish with 340. So, you know, there's the way they design that offense is just, they can score points, but it's almost designed to be like an, you know, to use a wrestling term, it's just, it's designed to be like the RKO out of nowhere, right? Like, it's just supposed to be, you don't know where it's coming from. It's tough to predict. Now, I'm playing the route that, okay, I say this all the time. It's not always necessarily, okay, let me play the replacement for the person who got hurt. Maybe San Francisco does decide to pass more. Brandon Ayuk's $5,800. When I saw that for the first time, I was like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? You know, like,
Can't pay that.
But maybe you can. I don't know. I don't think that's a bad price.
Really?
But at first, when I saw it, I was like, wasn't this guy $4K last week? Well, that's a hell of a jump.
Kendrick Bourne will come out of nowhere.
You're absolutely right. They will, but like, man, I feel like 6 to 9 targets is pretty likely here for him, and I think the upside is definitely there. I'm not going to advocate for people not to play Bourne or not to play, you know, Trent Taylor, and Dante Pettis apparently is still a thing. Maybe Richie James gets called up. Richie James, now he had an injury. He hasn't practiced yet, but he's better than a lot of people really know. So yeah, this is one of those frustrating games where I could see a slate breaker. And we haven't even talked about George Kittle. Seattle's never been good as long as I've been playing DFS at you know, guarding tight ends. And
he shows up against NFC West opponents too.
Well, knowing that means I'm going to have to invest in him and watch him get 6.3 fantasy points, just like Travis Kelce last week.
On the flip side, Tyler Lockett absolutely broke the slate last week. Got all the season points he's needed in 1 week last week. DK Metcalf, obviously the rundown of Budda Baker will be what's talked about, but Lockett was absolutely fantastic last week. The defense for San Francisco is getting a little better. They held the Rams to just a minimum amount of points, and obviously the New England game last week. I mean, there's no reason to say we can't depend on Seattle's offense or Seattle's wide receivers. But which one? Again, which one?
Yeah, and I think sometimes weird things go on in people's heads where they like talk themselves into things like it's this person's turn.
No.
Just know that that's a silly logic to play. It's not ever a situation where, well, Lockett had his week last week. This is DK Metcalf's week. That's, I can assure you, of years of playing, that's not how it works. So I do like this is a really high total game too. So it's not one that I feel like it's smart to ignore. I don't feel like that's going to be beneficial to anyone to just be like, yeah, there's nothing to really use here. But man, if you're wrong about Metcalf or Lockett, you're paying a lot of money for that. Mm-hmm. Like DK Metcalf at 7,500 on DraftKings could potentially be one of the most confusing prices I've seen in a really long time. DraftKings is a PPR site. That's not Metcalf's strength. And he's coming off a bad game. So, I really question where that price comes from. And quite honestly, I feel like that almost puts him in like unplayable territory, at least in cash games. But even in tournaments, I mean, he needs to do a lot. But he could certainly get there. I mean, I know he can, so I'm not completely writing him off. But, I'd rather find, even as much as I just poo-pooed Devontae Adams, I mean, I'd rather find the money to get up to Adams at that price where at least that you've got high target and high touchdown upside as opposed to Metcalf where you're really just looking at high. I'm sorry this is so boring to you, man. Do you want to just call it right now?
Listen, between the Lakers run and then me staying up till God knows when with the Dodgers, it's not you. It's been a long month for me, staying up way past my bedtime. I'm old.
No, I get it.
I'm not young anymore. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. Chris Carson obviously out. Carlos Hyde at 53, hamstring injury. Homer Dallas, Rashad Penny. There's no point, right? I mean, at 5,300, you can't play Carlos Hyde.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you can. He's going to be a running back for a team he's going to be the running back for a team that likes to use running backs. Like if he plays, he's in play. I mean, he might even be low end like cash consideration. This game is supposed to be a higher scoring game. I mean,
it will be. It will be.
Hyde definitely has the potential to get there. And I think a lot of people's attitude is going to be your first response where they're just like, it's fucking Carlos Hyde. I don't want to play Carlos Hyde. No, I don't want to play Carlos Hyde either. But at the same time, it's kind of like if I can get some upside, and there's upside there. I don't know how much, but yeah, I don't know. This last game now giving me a headache because it's really tough to just see the path. They're going to get there, but it's really not an easy path to kind of go down to figure out what's going to happen.
Okay, so we are now, let's just really quick. We talked about, wanting to talk more about cash games and single entry games. I think those are kind of the same thing, more than what we talk about MME throughout the entire show. So cash builds, where do we start? What's our really, really, really strong cash game plays here that we can just mix in a little bit later, but really our core here?
Yeah, I mean, for me right now as it exists, Derrick Henry, A1 day one, first guy I looked at and knew I was going to put in my lineups.
And he is going to be chalk, but the name of the podcast gives that away.
Yeah, and that doesn't matter to me. I don't care if we've got it. You can care about that stuff in tournaments and cash games. That's not a concern. You're really just trying to play the people who you think can get you the best score. This on paper lines up as being a Derrick Henry, 152 touchdown game, which is going to absolutely take you there. Then from there, man, it really gets, there's a lot of dependencies. Kareem Hunt, assuming he's healthy, is there. Jamal Williams, assuming he's the one who's going to start, that we don't get news that Aaron Jones is going to start. He's there. Like I said, on the quarterback side of things, for me, I know that like in 2020, a lot of the emphasis is put on the running quarterbacks. You don't really have that outside of like, Josh Allen in a matchup that I would rather not pay Josh Allen in. Lamar Jackson at 7,400. I didn't notice the price on him. That's a little bit interesting. That's a little bit lower than we're used to paying on him this week, and he's now the fourth highest priced quarterback. But for cash games, I just don't think you do that. In tournaments, that's a great play. You just start scrolling through this, and you're like, the first guy you're looking at is Burrow. And then after that, I think it's Carr. So, I mean, for me, the decision is in my first lineup, I've gone through 3 iterations. It's been lineup 1 was Burrow, like Burrow, AJ Green, Derrick Henry. That short stack was kind of like, okay, that's how I'm going to approach cash and probably my single entry lineup, my main single entry lineup. Then it turned into, all right, let's go Herbert and Keenan Allen. And now I think we're going Carr and Waller with Hunt on the bring back. Keenan Allen, I mentioned that name. He's the wide receiver guy I think that's the most likely to produce, a good result. And then at value, it's Darnell Mooney. We have to see how Allen Robinson progresses through the week. I'm 100% sure.
The one concern he has, though, is it was a Monday night game, so it's an extra
you are
day
right.
that he loses.
Yes.
But
the Bears don't seem like they're a smart organization. They seem like the type of people who would absolutely rush, someone out onto the field. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, how I'm handling it. Now for the important things, this is a really good college football weekend. So let's talk like 2 minutes college football.
Let's do it.
I haven't looked at the night slate yet because it came out while I was actually trying to do work before this podcast. Now I'm just done for the day. I'm worn out. But I think it's really interesting in the capacity that we have a $4,700 quarterback who I think people are going to look at and just laugh at because he plays for Kansas. I really think that he is in play this week. His name is Jalen Daniels. I think that he is an interesting cash game play as QB2. Sorry, I was trying to sell some of my Apple stock. It was earnings.
Do we need to do that?
Well, it was earning. I bought like 100 shares because it's earnings day today,
right?
And it's gone up like $290. So I was like, all right, that's enough. I'm going to sell Apple.
It's up 4.2% right now, 4.6% right now.
Yeah, I like making money. I'm a scalper. I don't like. I'm married. And so I don't have like the ability to go from woman to woman. So I do that with stocks instead. And stocks and fantasy, I get to just like on a week in, week out basis, I'm sick of you. I'm not using you anymore.
And it all disappoints you all the same.
Yeah. So college football, but like I was getting at saying, Breece Hall to me is the starting point there. The reason I'm bringing this up is I want to do more content, but I don't have time,
Yeah,
and this is like a little added bonus. I think Breece Hall is there. Kyron Williams might go a little bit overlooked against Georgia Tech. That defense is terrible. Risk that Ian Book could take over the game, sure. But I really like the potential there for Kyron Williams to have like a 35-plus point game. So those are the 2 guys I'm looking at. Javian Hawkins for Louisville is someone that I think people are tongue-in-cheek poo-pooing because, he had a big game last week and dude, this guy's a volume monster. Like he gets the football, and that's going to be one of the funnest matchups to watch this week is Virginia Tech and Louisville. Louisville has been destroyed by teams who can run the football. They got smashed by UNC. They got smashed by Wake Forest. Like there's nothing to me that says stay away from playing Javian Hawkins. Wide receivers, super interesting. Really like Tylan Wallace this week. I think, though, you're probably going to have to live in that like really cheap wide receiver range. You can look at some of the guys from the Big Ten I think are actually in good positions. A lot of the guys from Indiana. Whop Phillier, I mean, it's just really tough. It's been, it's tough to really know right now how things are going to pan out there. But like Whop Phillier is a little more expensive than Ty Freifogel. I think I like Freifogel a little bit more. We do have some injury there with the Morris kid out that could propel like a guy in like the 3K range onto the table. So I need to get a little bit more there. And then I think Melton from whatever team he plays for. I know I'm being extremely helpful. Melton from whoever the hell he came from. I'm trying to pull.
Is there an edge in
Bo
college
Melton.
football? Is there an edge in college football when with some of these smaller teams that we just don't care about? Or are people smart enough?
College football, it's an interesting beast. My gut reaction is, yeah, there's an edge there because I think that you get a lot of guys that follow certain providers, and a lot of times certain provider. And I know I'm just going to be an asshole and say things that people it makes it sound like I'm talking shit about other providers. That's not necessarily my intention, but I've seen a lot of groupthink that goes extremely, extremely wrong. Like a couple of weeks ago against Clemson, people were like trying to pump Jeff Sims because he was 5.1. Have you fucking watched Clemson play football? Have you watched Georgia Tech play football? Like Georgia Tech's, and not to mention Jeff Sims was fucking terrible. Like he will, mark my words, he will progress, but he is a young guy who just doesn't have it together, and you're expecting him to play the best team in the country and be successful? No. And look, someone's going to fire away at me and say, well, you're advocating playing, the same type of quarterback for Kansas this week. But mark my words, Iowa State's defense is nowhere like Clemson. And look, Kansas's offense is not as good as Georgia Tech, but that's not really the point, So I think there are definitely some paths to staying away from like bad chalk. Every sport has it every single week. And so it's really just, doing the research yourself and just making sure, like, does it make sense to play the guy I'm playing? And like we talked about with Rashard Higgins, like, price is not really the factor, right? Like, yes, we need Devontae Adams to remarkably outproduce Rashard Higgins because he's twice the amount of money. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that Higgins can get 6 or 7 points and be like, okay, for point per dollar, he did okay. Because Devontae Adams could finish with 25 fantasy points, which is not good for his price, but still potentially land on the optimal if all of the other top-end receivers bust and we get value that comes through and running backs have. So there's different facets of, I think, how you have to think about things. But college football, and look, I'm a good, bad daily fantasy player. I'm really good at giving advice, and I know what I'm talking about in a lot of situations, but I still make a lot of really dumb mistakes when it comes to my lineup builds, and I really try to stay away from that. It's just trying to be too cute. Being cute is not long-term success in daily fantasy. So maybe I'll do, maybe as the Pac-12 comes back, I'll try to and maybe even this weekend, I'm thinking maybe like Friday night, I might just come on and do a show. I'm done with all of my research for the main slate. So I've got all that in my back pocket. I know what's going on there. Maybe I'll come in and do something there this weekend.
How much does a lack of a crowd come into situations where you may not be thrilled with Ohio State going to Beaver Stadium, but there's no crowd there?
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, and I think it's probably more important for certain teams, but Ohio State's one of those teams that it probably doesn't matter for because they're just so good.
Well, they've struggled at Penn State traditionally, not to the point where they're not scoring 30 points a game, they're not scoring 50 points a game. They could put up 50 with no crowd in a night game at Beaver Stadium.
Let me tell you something. I live in Northeast Ohio, and I fucking hate Ohio State. Lord have mercy, my whole life.
I knew there was one reason I liked you. I just couldn't figure out what it was.
Yeah, I desperately hate Ohio State so much. And every year Penn State has their fucking number, and then with 5 minutes left to go, whatever limp dick coach they have at the time, runs into the locker room, finds a shirt, puts it in a box, runs out to his car, gets some fucking wrapping paper he just bought for Christmas at Dollar General, wraps it up, runs it across to Ohio State's coach and says, "Here you go. I'm wrapping it up for you. You can take this now." And they fucking blow it every year. But Ohio State, it is always someone you don't expect. Man, my favorite moment in the last few years is when, oh my God, when Rondell Moore just put his, oh man, I watched that game. And I just laughed the whole time.
That was the breakout.
Oh my God, because fucking Purdue was terrible. Like, they're fun offense, but oh my God, that defense.
And then they go to Maryland and they
get stomped. Or Ohio State.
Ohio State goes to Maryland. He could lose to Maryland on a 2-point conversion.
Yeah,
I could have completed. It's just ridiculous sometimes. It's just ridiculous how it all works out sometimes. But awesome. Anything else, sir?
All right. No, I said, I'm going to really try my best to put on some kind of like college football show on Friday. We'll see if we could pull that together because I think it would be really fun to do.
Keep it right here on the Eat the Chalk podcast, live on YouTube, on Apple, on iTunes, on all the StreamYard, on all the fun stuff. Give it a listen. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. DFS Headquarters on Twitter at DFS Headquarters. Join us. Get Nick's final projections for everything. We got the Masters coming up. I'll handle that. Got some nice UFC fights this weekend. Got a lot of stuff down the pipe here coming up. Some big, obviously, NFL games. NASCAR season coming to an end here. What do you think, Nick? Good?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. I'm going to get a nap. We'll see you guys later. He is that Nick from CW.